biggest question to ask yourself before you send out a survey is, do I need to do a survey? All of you would have received endless numbers of surveys in your first class inbox and found them to be completely useless. Or perhaps you filled them in really stupidly, not taking them seriously. You do not want to be on the receiving end of that. So think very, very carefully. Do you need to do a survey, and are people at school the best people for you to survey? So I've put here, many surveys are poorly planned and are not helpful. So make sure that yours are relevant. So if you're doing something which requires expert knowledge, so something like advances in IVF treatment, surveying teenagers is completely pointless. Do not do it. So I've put here step 1, decide why a survey is an appropriate research process for your research question. Do you need the opinions of many people? So define the information you want to find. Don't start asking your questions first. Think, what is it that I actually want to find out from this survey? So then you need to define the target group. Who are you going to survey? Are you going to be able to get enough people in that group to make it useful? So if you're surveying just people at school, ask yourself if that is the most appropriate group. Are their opinions really important or useful? Do they really know about Japanese folklore? Do they really know about successful podcasts for the NBA? Think very carefully about it. So you need to consider all of these things. What age group are you going to use? Do you want males and females? Will you be able to find even numbers of both? Are you going to use a variety of socioeconomic groups? So wealthy, middle class, etc. Professions, will you be able to get a wide variety? Why is that group appropriate? How many will you include? So if you're using SurveyMonkey, you need to remember that only the first 100 responses can be used. So you may consider sending out a few different links, duplicate your SurveyMonkey. Who will you include? So that's the target group really. How are you going to contact the sample? Will you email them? Will you ring them, letter, Facebook? So lots of students find putting it on Facebook is a fast way of doing it, but remember you're only going to get your own Facebook friends, which may not be a representative sample. Even if you're doing a survey, you still need to get informed consent. So they still need to know why you're doing it, what you're going to use the results for, etc. They also need access to your report if you do a survey. So you need to offer them that. And how will you assure them confidentiality? So SurveyMonkey obviously won't identify them, so that's a way around any confidentiality issues. But if people are also not identified, they're much more likely to give a stupid or inappropriate response. Then step 4, choose the method of reaching the target audience. So here, similar to contacting the sample, are you going to do interviews, ask the same questions? Will you email them? So most students do tend to fall back on SurveyMonkey, and it is really useful because it analyzes the results for you. How will you make sure you get a high response rate? So usually the day that the survey is sent out, people will either do it straight away or forget about it. So you may need to think about how you're going to give gentle reminders. So all of that is part of your planning even before you start to write your questions. So you need to obviously write down every single question you want to ask and then go through and decide if that question is really needed. You don't want your survey to be too long. People will just lose interest and opt out of it. Decide which closed questions to ask. So it might be things like their age, their gender, etc. Something to remember for SurveyMonkey as well is that you can only ask 10 questions that are free. So you may need to have a number of different sub questions within a question. And then remember as well, the closed questions are much more easy to analyse, but they don't allow people to justify their opinions unless you put a comment box. So then decide what open questions you're going to have and what prompting questions you'll have as well. So the closed questions are really easy to answer. So things like, do you attend a gym? Yes or no. And then you can go into more details. So the open questions allow people to use their own words and give the issues that are really important to them. But if you provide prompts, then it can help them to make a decision, it can prompt their memory, and you can provide a list of alternatives. So it might be something like, put the following in order of importance, or tick which of the following apply to you, and have a list there. And again, that's easier to analyse. Putting the questions in a meaningful order. So obviously you want your easy questions first, excuse me, and they need to flow naturally on from each other. So you don't really want to jump around, shifting from topic to topic too quickly. Have a variety of questions, so don't have too many similar questions. And then closing questions. At the end, people can sort of have lost interest, so don't leave the important questions to the end. And potentially sensitive questions should actually be at the end. So if people don't want to answer, they've already answered most of the rest of the survey. You should also give an not applicable or do not wish to answer response option as well. And then once you've put your survey together, it's a very good idea to edit the survey. A pilot survey where you send it out to a few people to try it is an excellent idea, because your questions don't always ask what you think they're asking. So are the questions going to generate the information that you want? Are they giving enough options? Can people understand the questions? Are they too hard? Do people understand words in the same way that you do? Are you giving any words that are misleading or leading? So if you say, what do you dislike about something, you're assuming that they do dislike it. And then any questions that are too embarrassing or personal. Related to that, just coming back up to the top here, before you send your survey, you must get an ethics approval number either from me, Miss Smith, or Dr. Sharp. And the reason for this is that we don't want people to be distressed by your survey. So if you're asking something about post-traumatic stress disorder or experiences that may trigger disturbing memories, we just want to double check for those sorts of things. And then make sure that your survey looks professional. There's no spelling errors, so that can be part of the pilot survey, and it's well laid out. Now, for your survey planning, you should put all of that into your folio. Here's a little checklist for your survey use, so you can tick those off as you go along. And then you need to put stuff in your folio after you've done the survey. So these questions here, how many did you approach, who completed it, and then what did you actually find out? So similar to the interview or your internet research, etc., you don't want to just dump in your folio everything that you found. So I've put here a couple of examples of how to represent your surveys. So this one was about how can teenagers make an informed decision about volunteering. So the student needed to find out, okay, what do they actually know about volunteering in the first place, and what do they want to know? So it was appropriate for this student to survey students at his school in years 10, 11 and 12. Notice he's not identifying which school, that's for confidentiality. And then he's explaining how he's constructed his survey and why. So not important, hardly important, somewhat important, important, very important. So it would have been useful for him to give an opt-out option here as well, maybe a comment box. So he's put in a couple of examples, not all of the questions are here. And then he has analysed it. So the findings, he's put down the main findings, not every single one. And then he's shown what he's going to use the findings for. So he's using the findings as headings to guide his research, and then some problems with the survey, and then the next step. Now, this student was looking to create a healthy food and lifestyle blog to inspire young women. So it was appropriate for her to survey girls and women from a variety of different age groups, starting from around 15 up. So she's given reasons why she chose that group. And then the questions that she wanted to ask. So here she's got, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is healthy eating to you and your lifestyle? So there's lots of options here. You can see that it is relatively important to most people. Do you often find yourself wishing you had the motivation, inspiration to live a healthier lifestyle? So unfortunately you can't quite read what the options here are, but it may be things like never, sometimes, often, most of the time, all the time. So it's always good to have an odd number of responses so that people can choose a midline one. And then here's one where she's got them a prompting question. So tick what you believe to be the most important elements, and then do these kinds of blogs and sites inspire you. So again, it's a good idea to have a graded system. So not just a yes, no. It might be not at all, a little, etc. So giving them options. And then she's got the key points and then the decisions that she's making. So based on the decision, on the question here, most people are following Instagram. So she's decided to make hers on Instagram. And then she has gone through and evaluated the survey. So were there enough responses? What were the responses like? Were they reliable? What follow-up is needed, etc. So that's a very good survey example. So you must just to remind you, you must get your survey checked before you send it off.